Hello, all. Welcome to the 19th edition of Dialogue with Experts. My name is Nandini Aragar, and I'm the program director of this show. I extend a warm welcome on behalf of Prime Point Foundation, e-magazine Presence, and Dijai, Digital Journalists Association of India, to one and all watching us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and other social media platforms. Okay. In today's edition of the show, we are excited to be conversing with Dr. K Ramachandra Murthy and Sneha Gore, both well-known journalists in their respective fields. Dr. K Ramachandra Murthy is a well-known legendary journalist in the combined Andhra and Telangana states. He is a PhD holder in journalism with nearly 50 years of journalism experience. He has served various Telugu and English print media like Indian Express, Andhra Prabha, and Andhra Jyoti. Besides, he has also served Varta and Sakshi TV at a senior level. He has also launched several print and television channels successfully. Presently, he's running two websites, primepost.in and sakalam.in in English and Telugu respectively, besides also running the Sakalam channel. He has authored more than a dozen books in Telugu and English and also received a dozen of journalism-related awards. Sneha Gore Mehendale is a journalist turned journalism educator. She has worked as an anchor with Star News in Hindi and Marathi languages. And after having worked for many years in radio, television news, and the digital media, she currently works as an assistant professor at Symbiosis Institute of Media and Communication, Pune. Sneha is a Google News Initiative certified fact-checking trainer. She also runs her own podcast named Itihas on contemporary Indian history. Welcome, Dr. Ramachandra, and welcome, Sneha. It is indeed an honor for us to be interviewing you both today. I now request Mr. Prime Point Srinivasan, Managing Editor of the Presence magazine, to take over the conversation.
Thank you, Nandini. Welcome to Dr. Ramachandra Murthy garu and Sneha Gore. And we are having a legendary journalist, Dr. Ramachandra Murthy garu, and who is a very well-known English and Telugu journalist in combined states of Andhra and Telangana. Sneha is another a celebrity when she was working in Star TV and a very popular news anchor, and now turned educator, journalism educator. I welcome both of you for the edition 19. Now we have two people from a traditional media and with a long experience of 50 years, Dr. Ramachandra Murthy garu, and a young journalist and become educator in Sneha. So I would like to start with Dr. Ramachandra Murthy garu. Sir, in your 50 years of journalism experience, you have worked with print media, even from the typesetting days and even television media. And now you are with the internet media. Now, what are the changes that you observe in the content style as well as in the attitude of the journalists?
When I was a student of journalism at Usmania University in 1973. I was a student of Bashiruddin. He's a well-known educator in journalism. Then I went to Vijayawada to join Indian Express. And I shifted to Andhra Prabha on the advice of Puttarpalli Sundaraya, a well-known CPM leader. Then I went to Bangalore in 1975 and was there till 1979 during emergency. I was working with a team headed by Arun Shauri. It was a great time in Indian Express, being in Indian Express, being associated with Indian Express during emergency. Indian Express was fighting the emergency regime. I was part of that. Then I returned to Vijayawada in 79 and I was at the desk of Andhra Prabha. At that time, the matter was hand composed, letter by letter. They used to impose the matter in the page. The editor used to stand at the stone, we call it stone, where page is made. And everybody was assisting him. It was a scene to behold. Editor who comes in the morning at 9:30, stays up to 11:30, 12 in the night when the first page is given. Then there were not many editions. Andhra Prabha had 3 editions. One Bangalore edition, one Vijayawada edition, one Hyderabad edition. Then Inadu came. When Inadu was launched in 1975, 74, 75 in Visakhapatnam, even then the matter was hand composed. After Udayam was launched in 1984, I launched the Vijayawada edition of Udayam. There were only 2 editions at that time, one in Vijayawada, one in Hyderabad. The editor used to stay in Hyderabad. I launched the Vijayawada edition. There we started the composition on computer. I was the first journalist, perhaps in Andhra Pradesh, to compose my own editorials directly on computer. Then there is no looking back. Computer has taken over composing and everything, and the modernization has set in. The attitude of journalists has also changed. And in Telugu, the tabloids have come in 1887, 88. Inadu and Udayam have introduced district tabloids. With that, the district reporters also were more. They had to cater to 12 pages, 16 pages, and 24 pages of tabloid. So there was a reporter for every mandal. The mandal system also came into being during NTR's regime in 1984, 83, 84. So the district has about 45 to 50 mandals in average. There were 23 districts in Andhra Pradesh. Every district had 45 to 50 journalists. We call them part-time reporters. And they were feeding the tabloid. So there was a lot of explosion in terms of people working for a newspaper. Earlier it was not the case. Before the onset of tabloids, there were editors, assistant editor who writes editorials occasionally, and news editor who takes care of the production of the paper. And he's assisted by about a couple of senior chief sub-editors and senior sub-editors. And a desk comprising 15 to 16 people would have been there. That was the strength, total strength. But after the onset of tabloid, the strength has gone up. And the journalists also started coming closer to politicians. Politicians also came to understand the value of tabloid journalism. The local news are coming more, and they started befriending the journalists. And journalists also were getting closer to politicians. So that had its own ramifications on the quality of journalism. So the politics and journalism had started to work together. The editors used to meet chief minister and none else. The minister used to come to the editor's chambers. Later, the ministers and the editors also started having dinner together. That was the change observed. I worked with editors like Pandita Raju Nageswara, K Subramaniam, and Narla was there as editor for Andhra Jyoti. They were all stalwarts. Narla was also a Rajya Sabha member. But later on, when younger generation took over, there is a natural delusion. The editors were not very particular about their movements, their friends, and their associations. And the editorials are being written by editorial writers separately. Editors were not writing editorials after some time, and they were managing. They were visiting politicians in the evening. Editors were there in the office only from 11 to 5 or 6 in the evening. Afterwards, when my time has come, when I was editor in 1989, I used to stay in the office till 2 o'clock in the morning. So then the cycle has changed. Editors are staying put in the office. They are monitoring the whole thing, the reporting network and also the desk. And there was little time left for the editors to socialization or to meet people. The quality of writings the quality of scholarship of journalists also has taken its beating. Now, at the moment, there are 4 main newspapers in Telangana and 3 in Andhra. The main newspapers are Inadu, Sakshi, Andhra Jyoti, and Namaste Telangana. Namaste Telangana is owned by the TRS chairman and chief minister. Sakshi is owned by Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh and YCP chairman, president. And Andhra Jyoti and Inadu are virtually with Chandrababu Naidu. So the media, whole media, there is no independent newspaper. If there is any independent websites like mine, they are not accountable. They don't have great influence. So media is divided on caste lines and also on political lines. In Andhra, there are 3 papers, Inadu, Sakshi, and Andhra Jyoti. Inadu and Andhra Jyoti are with Chandrababu Naidu, TDP, and Sakshi is with YCP. There is no other paper to mention. So much so, the media scene is not very good, and we cannot say there is an independent news agency or news channel or newspaper. There are some days when a banner in Sakshi may not be there at all in Inadu or Andhra Jyoti, or a banner in Andhra Jyoti may not be seen in Sakshi. But that kind of partisan biased journalism is prevalent in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana today.
Sir, we will come back to this subject again, because this is a very serious issue. Because the media is not neutral, it may have an impact on the public consumption also. Now I'm asking Sneha, because you have been one of the celebrity news anchors of popular television channel, and you are now probably many of the things that shared by Dr. Ramachandra Murthy garu, probably something was being news to you, probably you might have not even seen, that might not have been born in those times, because these are all the journey of the senior editors like Ramachandra Murthy garu is totally different. You are all in a new era with the social media. You are a podcaster yourself, you are a teacher, journalism. And how do you find the changes that have happened? Is it the hurried journalism? What has happened is the facts are given a compromise. Earlier, it was Ramachandra Murthy garu's time, it was fact first, news second. Now I think it has become a news first and fact second, because something breaking news and all, you might have even given a lot of breaking news without even knowing what is it going on, what's going on. Then how do you find the changes that have happened here? Is it going to be a good one for the society and for the people at large?
Right. I think I am, especially when it comes to having experienced a certain kind of journalism that Ramachandra Murthy garu is talking about. He mentioned that he passed out in 1973. I did my journalism 25 years, no, more than that. I think 30 years, 32 years after that, 34 years to be precise. So I belong to a completely different era, so much so that I have just seen Quark Express and I have never personally worked on it. When I worked with print, it was always in design. So, what he mentioned about the typesetting and everything is something that I've only read. I have never personally worked in that era. But see, even in the past 13 years that I have been in journalism, and 13 years is not a very long time compared to what Murthy garu has experienced, I also see this sudden shift towards the need for speed. There used to be this game called Need for Speed when I was a kid. So suddenly journalism has become more about the need for speed. And what you mentioned is absolutely right, where facts used to be sacrosanct in journalism. At least when we learned journalism in post-graduation, this was told to us that the journalist's first duty is towards the facts. And facts are paramount. So that thing is becoming compromised, so to say, because there's a constant need for speed. So when I work with television, I have also a couple of times committed these blunders where, because I had to break a news, I have said something on screen only to eat my own words 15 minutes later and apologizing on screen saying that we are very sorry, this is not the information, this has happened. And that is, I mean, it is embarrassing for somebody on screen. Let's keep that aside. But it is also detrimental to the whole discipline of journalism when, for the need of speed, you kind of you let go of the sacrosanctness of facts. In my opinion, and that is only increasing by the day. This I'm talking about some 6 7 years ago, but even today, when news are not exactly broken on television anymore, all news, irrespective of whether they are print or TV, are broken on Twitter. Most people do break their news on Twitter, and I also find my news on Twitter. So even after breaking news on Twitter, the first thing, the TV or print doesn't do that any, I mean, obviously, but the web editions of print or the e-papers of print media houses also commit the same mistakes of letting go of facts because they want to be there in a particular time. So I am a fact checking trainer. I, a couple of years ago, there's this whole Google News initiative that was launched across India, and a lot of about I think 500 odd trainers were 500 odd journalists and educators were trained by Google News initiative, and I got trained in that, and then I've been teaching my students about fact checking skills. So fact checking has become paramount because of this need for speed. The need for speed is being detrimental to the fact driven journalism, and that's why this whole fact checking has become important. Now, if you think about it, Murthy Garu, you'll agree that fact checking should not come as a surprise. It is expected in journalism that you have to check facts. But because people have sort of let go of facts, there is this newly created need of fact checking, which we see around. So I completely agree with you that things have changed quite a bit, but the things, when, especially when it comes to the sacrosanctity of facts, things don't really look that good. That's why perhaps this need of fact checking has risen, in my opinion.
There is a learning that is needed between the senior generation like Dr. Ramachandra Murthy Garu and next third generation. You are a third generation only because between Ramachandra Murthy Garu and yourself there is one more generation. Is the
Yes, 34 years. So yes, third generation.
You are in the third generation now. You are the first generation, you are third generation. What are the lessons that the senior generation should learn from the younger generation and vice versa? Can I ask? I am going to ask the views of both. Let me briefly, Dr. Ramachandra Murthy Garu, can you kindly share your views?
Yeah. Now younger journalists are more dynamic. They are more motivated, committed, and they spend all their time, if they like, in journalism, and they can also go out of journalism and do something else. But as long as they are in journalism, they are committed to it. But the fact is, as Sneha said, there are facts are sacrosanct, but it depends on which fact you pick up and which fact you leave. That is where the bias lies. That now the social media is the first to break any news. Print media comes last. TV comes second. Both TV and print are totally biased in our area. And it is the case in Delhi also. Even a person like Pranay Rai, who is a pioneer in TV journalism, is not seen as a fair journalist by some people. He is accused of running a channel which is called Sonia DTV. So these kind of things are going on for the last 10-15 years. Earlier it was not the case. Now the anchors are shouting. Anchors are blatantly supporting a party or blatantly opposing a party without having to do anything with facts. Facts are being twisted. Fake news are being spread. This is quite different time actually from the times I started my career. It's quite entirely opposite. But younger generation, younger people are there who are still committed, who are prepared to go to forest to interview next state leaders, Maoists, who are prepared to take any kind of risk. There are some good journalists left. Most of them are in younger generation. I'm happy to say that.
Sneha, what is your view? What are the lessons that you need to learn? That is the third generation journalists, now present third generation journalists like you, to learn from the senior generation, and what do you think that the senior generation should learn from you people?
I'll talk about 2 points here, sir. in agreement with what he just said about the outlook of news and the bias that news media is always accused of spreading, I would say that if there is one thing that my generation has to learn is that, you know, the fearlessness that comes with a journalist. Journalists in his era or in the bygone era used to be known for the fearlessness. And sir, you have worked with the Express Group, especially during emergency. So we always hear these stories and these tales of how fearlessly Ramnath Goenka and the entire team stood up to Mrs. Gandhi and the emergency and sort of did everything in their capacity to oppose it. That is something that has become a legend. Now, coming to today's era, I don't see any legend of this kind which will have the guts to stand up to any government. It can be a state government, it can be a central government, but I don't see any media house doing this. And this is also a credit of the government back then, that in spite of doing this, most of these people survived and they are alive. So I am not even sure that today's governments would also be so lenient on the journalists. So that fearlessness that comes with a journalist is lacking. And I personally think that my generation should learn to stand up against what they feel is wrong, and to stand up for what they feel is right, for the greater good, as we say, for the social good. This is one thing. Secondly, sir, to answer the other question, what they should learn from us is, there is a problem that my generation is facing. I might sound a little complicated, but I'll try to articulate what I feel. For my generation, the identity of a journalist is very complex. I don't know whom to call a journalist anymore. So when Murthy Garu started journalism, the distinction between a common man and a journalist was very clear. Journalist had access to information. It was journalist's job to seek information and to bring it out for public good. Common man didn't have access to that. Common man just read his newspapers, listened to radio, maybe got information, and that's it. Nowadays, this distinction between who's a common man and who's a journalist is very unclear, because everybody has potential access to everything. With the whole democratization of information that internet has brought along, this has created a problem for my generation, because anybody who's writing, long blog post is also a journalist. Anybody who's writing detailed Facebook post also calls himself a journalist. Anybody potentially who has a smartphone with him is also a journalist, because he can disseminate so much of information. And problematically, fake news also. If you have WhatsApp, you can create ruckus. I mean, if you decide to spread fake news, then it's a long lost game. So for me, who's a journalist is a problematic question. I don't know how to answer that. So that also means that we face so much of competition in terms of a common man. Back in the days, if I was a journalist with Express Group, who was my competition? It was potentially Times of India or the Hindu, or Deccan Chronicle or Hindustan Times. Now if I'm a journalist with the Express, my competition is every person who has a smartphone. So things have become difficult for my generation in that sense. This is one. And secondly, what is news is also a question. So that is something that my generation is finding very difficult to navigate. How do you decide what is news and what is not? How do you decide what is good for public, what is not in public good or for the greater good, as we say? Those lines, ideological lines, are becoming complicated to navigate, in my opinion.
Very nicely presented. Now, with the emergence of social media, everybody has become. Many people have become a scientist, economist, and even about our vaccination. Also, everybody gives their own. Even without being a doctor, they are giving their own opinions. And WhatsApp, the bad news gets spread, the false news gets spread faster than the good news. So the people emanating from the WhatsApp University or YouTube University, they are becoming more powerful. In this situation, what do you think will be the, and another important challenge is about the bias of the journalist. Today in the country, the journalists are divided into either pro-Modi or anti-Modi, only that much, because not based on the policy, not based on philosophy. And this type of emergence, what do you think will be the future of our journalism? I would like to ask Dr. Murthy Garu.
I think the future lies with social media and web news journalism, because It is less expensive. Any journalist with conviction can have his own platform, small platform, and he will have his own viewers and readers. And nowadays in Andhra Pradesh, people cannot read one paper and get satisfied because he is not completely informed. Even if he reads 2 or 3 papers, he will not know the truth. So that's why he is going to social media. Social media has many people, people who are part of political parties, who are working for political parties, who are working for politicians and industrial groups. But there are also independent people, like we see Shekhar Gupta or Siddharth Vadarajan in Delhi. People who are running the channels and websites on donations because they don't have big capital. So those kind of people will be more in future, and their credibility is more than the credibility of an established newspaper editor.
Even the high profile editors or journalists also, nowadays I find their writings either this way or that way. Again, they are biased because they don't take a neutral stand. What do you feel?
But we cannot take a neutral stand in case of, say, for example, the agitation, the protest movement that is being run by the farmers in Delhi, or in Delhi-Haryana border. We cannot have a neutral stand there. We have to take a stand either in favor of farmers or in favor of government. I am in favor of farmers.
Okay, you can, but it is not. But generally, I find that either the news media or the journalists, they take a stand because either pro-Modi or anti-Modi, not based on your pro-Modi man can even support the farmers, and anti-Modi man can even support the or against. But that is not like this. Today, the trend is becoming a vertically divided.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
even among the senior journalists, even among the media houses also.
Who is dividing? It's Modi who is dividing it. Modi is such a strong person.
No, that is whosoever is dividing it, but whether as a consumer, whether we will be able to get the correct information, as you rightly said that you cannot read one newspaper and get in those days, even 20 years back, you read one particular newspaper, you will get the picture about the editorial and the news per editorial opinions were separated. Today, the news contains the opinions.
Yeah, yes. That's why even the banner is editorialized. Every news item is editorialized. Opinion.
Yes, news becomes an editorial.
Yeah.
And now this is a challenge for the common man, not for the journalist. This is a challenge for the common man. Even the social media also spreads false information, again based on the rightness bias, either pro or anti.
Yeah, yeah. They have a choice in social media. They have a choice. People can choose the website they want to read or the portal they want to see.
Sneha, what do you feel?
I agree with you, sir. I'll share some of my experiences as a journalism teacher because, sometimes you feel very proud of yourself that you are creating the future of journalism in that sense because we are impacting the next gen journalist who will be there. Sometimes it's also kind of overwhelming to think that we are affecting so many future journalists. But for myself, whenever I talk in my class and whenever I'm teaching something to my students, I always try to maintain that you have to understand that we are all humans and government or country as an institution are way beyond the scope of one single person, and no single person is all good or all bad. It's we always live in grays. There is nobody who has completely destroyed the country without doing anything good, and there is nobody who has done only good and never done anything bad. It doesn't happen. So let's stop looking at our political leaders and the government of the day as something that has completely ruined us or something that has completely elevated us only because of it. You know how nations function, how governments function is a very vast thing which goes beyond one person. So it's not that people who are saying that Modi has done so great things, such great things for this country, that this country, what did Nehru do? What did any of the previous prime ministers did? It's not right to ask a question. Similarly, it's not right to say that Modi has done only bad and there is nothing good that has come out of the 7 years rule that he has had. So at least for myself, I try to instill this balance in those students, because tomorrow they are going to go out in the industry and they are going to be the journalists who shape the opinions of society. So for myself, I try to say that. But unfortunately, what you have observed is completely right, where people expect you to take a stand which is either at this end of the spectrum or that end. So you cannot say that I like this in this person and I don't like this in this person. So either you are a bhakt or you are an anti-national. You cannot be in the middle, and that is a problem for me as a professor. I have to be in the middle. I cannot take a stand. Similarly, as a journalist also, I cannot take a stand on most of the issues. But whether you sympathize with a political ideology or you don't is a different question. It should not color your judgment of an issue, is what I have, at least I have been practicing and I have been preaching, hopefully. Hopefully those, at least couple of them whom I teach will see some sense in this and practice journalism in that sense. But things are kind of grim in that case, sir. And it's not only India specific. I'm sure you'll agree that this is happening all over the world, where people are actually going towards end of the spectrum, both ends of the spectrum. I mean, look at what is happening in the US and a lot of other countries, where people are either on this side or on that side. You cannot be in the middle, and that's a problem, because in real life you're always in the gray. You are never only in black or white. So that's what I think about it personally.
Yes. How your students react, because they are much more younger. They are in the age group of 18, 20 and all. What is their they see the world? What are their reactions to that?
Unfortunately, sir, I somehow feel that they don't see the world outside as a very happy place. You know what I mean? So when you are 20, you're always full of zest and full of energy and full of positive outlook towards the world. And you feel that anything is possible and the opportunities are endless. At least that's what I used to think is a characteristic of a 20 in people who are in their 20s. I don't see that very often, because if you look at, and I feel the kind of content that they're consuming is responsible for this. Because if you see consistently, I mean, I grew up reading newspapers. I mean, you both belong to a very senior generation, but even for me, I grew up reading newspapers that used to give me a balanced view. They don't consume content that gives them a balanced view. It's not a newspaper for them, it's a views paper. So they always consume content with a particular point of view. And people or content with both ends of the spectrum always paints the world in a particular color. So I somehow fear that they have not developed a very balanced view of the world. Possibly once they go out in the industry and when they start working, things will change. But I see this very often, that they always come up with colored picture of the world, either on this side or on that side.
How many of them read the newspapers, first of all?
Oh, very few.
Because
Most of them
only
read it on their phones. They
because
don't read
they
newspapers.
are all in the social media. Whatever it comes in the from the WhatsApp university, only they will
Yeah,
all,
yeah.
not from the
Only
Symbiosis University.
only 5 to 10% of my students read newspapers, which is a very disheartening statistics, but it's true.
Yes, I'm coming to Dr. Murthy Garu. Sir, what about media policy? Suppose today the media is in a highly confused state. Even there are, after the emergence of technology, even censorship is there for film if you are going to stay in the film there. Whereas in the OTT platform, it is not there. There is no proper media policy. And the contents are, anybody can write anything. Absolutely, there is no freedom of expression. Is not absolute. We have also put up one podcast yesterday. We have made a video on that. Dr. Murthy Garu, what do you feel whether there is a need for a media policy for the country?
Yeah, there is a need for media policy, but who should decide the policy? Is it the editors, or is it the owners, or is it the government? Who has to decide? And who has to oversee it? Who has to monitor it? It's a difficult question. Actually, we are judged by the people every day. Every word we write will stand scrutiny by the people. So we have to be answerable to the people, our readers. We cannot be answerable to the government. The government cannot monitor us. The editor, who was a free bird earlier, was a free man, he was a giant of a man, who used to separate news and views, he is no more the same editor. He is appointed by owners. Owners are tackled by the government. So it's very difficult, complex situation today.
the owners are either pro-government or anti-government. Both sides are there on the ownership.
What?
The
What?
owners of a media, either they are pro or anti.
Anti.
Because
There are some owners who play safe, who don't allow their editors to write anything against government, but who also don't praise the government. There are journalists who praise Modi and who attack Modi. There are few journalists who give his view. Suppose, as Sneha said earlier, if Modi is doing something good, acknowledge it. If he is doing something wrong, attack it. That is happening only in some cases. Some journalists are doing it, even today. I have my own
observation.
I have my own preferences among journalists, top journalists also. I know some top journalists are there even today who acknowledge whatever good is done by Modi and who attack fearlessly what they feel, what they perceive wrong.
That is a neutral journalism. That is a neutral journalism.
But they cannot be a media policy for a country.
Sneha, what do you feel? Whether media policy is needed for the country?
It is undoubtedly it is needed, and I would also say that the policy needs to be updated frequently, which is more important than just drafting the policy. So, for example, this recent discussion that we are having about censoring the OTT platforms and social media content. Couple of months ago, we had this new directive that they'll also come under the purview of Ministry of INB. So, 1995 we have Cable TV Network Act, and after that there is no significant act that will cover a lot of new developments that have happened in terms of television. So it's not that media policy is not there. We do have media laws, we do have policies in place. Implementation of that is necessary, and frequent updation of that is necessary. OTT content was nowhere in the picture 5 years ago, but if you look at the proliferation of OTT now, you'll realize that yes, it is needed to control that. Now obviously there'll be a side to it that will say then it is censorship, and what is the use of OTT if it is going to be censored, etc. But I feel that these debates can be held, experts from those fields could be called, but we have to have some sort of framework which is neutral enough to guarantee that some policies could be framed and could be implemented.
Now at this stage, it's an excellent conversation. I would like to invite Nandini on the screen. She has a few questions that has been received from WhatsApp. Nandini, can you come on the screen?
Yes, sir. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Srinivasan. I would now like to ask a few questions we have received from our viewers via WhatsApp. Question number one, how do you think journalists can maintain a unique reputation on the internet, given the fact that there are too many people writing and calling themselves journalists?
I think Dr. Murthy Garu can give an answer. Supplemented by...
You can keep your reputation intact if you are credible, if you are writing what is a fact, only facts and nothing but facts, and if your comment is free of any bias. I know there are number of people writing for internet, but only few people carry conviction. Only few people have the credibility. Only few people have leadership. So it is the way you behave yourself, you react to a situation, you comment on a particular issue. But earlier I heard Sneha saying that you have to be neutral always. That is my problem. I cannot be neutral when a situation is seen as a clash between government and a section of the people who are opposing the government. We have to take a stand. Even earlier also, editors used to take stand. We cannot be neutral always, but there are media ethics are there. Media ethics have to be followed. The policy would be to follow ethics, to be factual, to be fair. That is the overall policy that is to be followed by everybody. Whoever journalist who is following that policy and who is adding value to what is already known to the people, who is giving some new information, will be respected, and his reputation will be intact.
Sneha, what do you feel?
I agree with him in principle. I would only add that the stands that we are taking need to be based on some facts rather than some preconceived notions. let the views that we have be based on the facts, because a journalist is also supposed to analyze, right? So at the end of analysis, he or she will obviously come up with a view, and it's perfectly fine to have a view, provided that the view can be justified with certain amount of facts, because a journalist's first obligation is supposed to be towards facts. But other than that, I totally agree with what he said. And I mean, I couldn't agree more with the question, because I also face this very, very often. Who's a journalist? Considering everybody is writing on internet these days, I don't know whom to call a journalist anymore. But be fair, be credible, and more importantly, be at it. I mean, it's not enough to just write an article and then go into oblivion. It's more important to keep writing. I'm saying writing, but you could be in video or audio or podcast or whatever. But it's important to keep on producing fair and accurate and credible content. Once you do that, then I think there's no stopping oneself.
Yes, Sneha was saying that she used to break news in a hurry and then apologize. Now I don't see any people doing it now.
No.
They're
And I'm so glad if people are not doing it anymore.
That would be more embarrassing, no? You release a false news and then you apologize. And it is for the channel also, it is something very, they may also feel bad, no?
Yeah.
Okay, then Nandini, can you give the second?
Yeah, the next question is, how far you think aggression in journalism is good? Is it benefiting the profession or damaging it?
Can I answer?
Murthy sir.
Yeah, aggression is always good, but aggression should be sensible and it should not be biased. Aggression in supporting somebody or in opposing somebody is not good, but aggression in going out of the way to gather facts, to interview some people, to know what is happening in a remote corner, that is more important. That is most welcome.
I agree. I would say that aggression is good in principle, because a lot of times the aggression can get you more news as a journalist. But there is a thin line between being a journalist and being an activist. It's aggression that will separate this line. So aggression is good, but don't be an activist. Otherwise, if you want to be an activist, then be an activist. Don't call yourself a journalist. It's that.
Nowadays, I find that the activists come with the banner of journalism.
Yeah.
Yes.
That becomes very, you are not able to differentiate between.
And for God's sake, please don't have shouting matches in your television newsroom on your panel discussions, on the people that you have called for the panel discussion. I mean, it's absolutely not right to be so aggressive towards your guests. I mean, you call them and then you shout at them. It's not something. We all know who does that on television. So that is not something that we support.
No, even in the television, when some people came, then definitely on seeing them, you will find that he will support this party or he will support that party, but not the subject, or he will be analyzing the subject. He will not analyze the subject, whatever the subject is. Suppose in all the channels, in all the language channels, as well as in English channel, if X is coming, either he supports the farmers or he supports the Modi or he is against Modi. That only type of branding has come. Even from the intellectual side, we are not having the neutrality of analyzing the issue and then coming out with the problem and solution. Is it not?
Earlier we used to do that.
Huh?
Earlier we used to do that.
Yes.
We used to analyze the situation and tell what it is. Then we'll give our opinion in editorial.
Yes.
But now it is the case.
Now it is editorial and news, views, everything is same.
Yeah.
Nandini, anything else is there?
Yes, so just one more question. Who do you think would be the ideal role model for youngsters today for TV journalism, television journalism?
I refuse to answer that question, because like I said, we're all humans, right? Ideal should be God, somebody who doesn't have any flaws. We all come with our own flaws and we all come with our own ideologies. So I would say try to become a journalist who minimizes harm. to anybody else. That's it. I mean, there's no point in saying, reciting good qualities of some particular well-known journalist. And I respect so many journalists for their particular qualities also. So back when I was doing journalism, all of us wanted to be television journalists because we had Barkha and Rajdeep and Pranoy Roy as somebody that we used to look up to. Obviously, they are still there, and a lot of other names have also come up, even on regional levels. Other names have come up, but I think it's a right decision. It's a right strategy to admire people for whatever good that they have and try to inculcate in that by minimizing harm to others. That would be my answer.
Yeah, it would have been very easy to answer this question 10 years ago, but today it's difficult because we have reservations about every journalist. We have respect for some journalists, but even regarding them, we have some reservations. So we cannot point out that one journalist also follow him. There is no ideal journalist per se.
Yes.
I would like to invite Srini on the screen. He is the person who is behind our technology. And Suresh, I would like to introduce Srinivasa Gopal. He is a technical expert who is behind all our programs. Now, I think we have come to the end of the show. And I thank Dr. Ramachandra Murthy Garu and Sneha Gore for their excellent conversation and sharing the views, which will be very useful for the current journalists as well as the future journalists. Thank you very much for sparing your very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. It was so great to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Sia.
Thank you.